In early 2025, the Rwandan-backed M23 rebel group captured swathes of territory in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo, or DRC, including the cities of Goma and Bukavu. This marked a rush of diplomatic activity, seeking to halt the violence, which has devastated the Eastern DRC for more than 3 decades, and contributed to one of the most complex humanitarian crises in the world. US and Qatar mediated agreements between the DRC, Rwanda and M23 in June and July were celebrated as a step towards peace. However, fighting in the Eastern DRC continues to rage, possibly even intensifying, casting serious doubt on the peace process. So in this video, we're going to explain what's been going on in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo, and why the peace process is faltering. Could you rank every single politician in the world? Hear our thoughts and argue with us on our podcast, the World Leader Leaderboard. Find it on the TLDR Podcast YouTube channel or in your favourite podcast app. Now, we can trace this conflict all the way back to the 1994 Rwandan genocide, when Hutu extremists killed some 800,000 primarily Tutsi people in Rwanda. The genocide ended when the Tutsi rebel group invaded the country and toppled the government, which prompted millions of Hutus to flee Rwanda for the DRC, including some of the perpetrators of the genocide, who eventually coalesced into the FDLR rebel group. Rwanda later invaded the DRC to hunt them down, sparking a series of truly devastating wars, involving several different countries, multiple invasions, and the overthrow of governments. Amid all of this, non-state armed groups proliferated in the Eastern DRC, including M23, a largely Tutsi group that had launched its first rebellion in 2012, briefly capturing Goma before being pushed back and signing a peace agreement in 2013. However, M23 re-emerged in late 2021, capturing swathes of mineral-rich territory, including more heavily populated areas, and they did this with the military support of Rwanda, including Rwandan boots on the ground. Beyond just capturing territory in the east, M23's political branch has talked about overthrowing the Congolese government itself. The major expansion of the M23's offensive early this year sparked a flurry of diplomatic activity. US-mediated talks resulted in a peace accord between the DRC and Rwanda in June, while complementary Qatari-mediated talks resulted in a declaration of principles, including a ceasefire, agreed by the DRC and M23 in July. So what's actually happened since then? Well, as one senior UN official said last week, violence is outpacing diplomacy, as the diplomatic progress is not being reflected in the security situation on the ground. In other words, fighting continues, with persistent clashes between M23 and pro-Congolese militias and the Congolese army in North and South Kivu provinces, with both the Congolese army and M23 rebels accusing each other of violating the ceasefire agreed to in Qatar in July. The next stages of that Qatari peace process have faltered. M23 walked away from peace talks when they were set to resume, accusing Congolese authorities of failing to meet their commitments. And the August 18th deadline to secure a permanent peace deal, established in the earlier agreement, was also missed, although both sides have now returned to the table. At the same time, according to the Institute for the Study of War, M23 has, quote, increased the tempo and scale of an indiscriminate counterinsurgency campaign against anti-M23 militia groups in the Eastern DRC with Rwandan backing, including legitimate military targets such as Hutu extremist militants. However, this has also allegedly involved a high degree of systematic violence against civilians. Reports of major atrocities have been emerging. The UN, for example, said that it received first-hand accounts indicating that at least 319 civilians were killed by M23 fighters, aided by the Rwandan military between the 9th and 21st of July in North Kivu province. Human Rights Watch similarly says that credible reports indicated that the number of people killed in North Kivu's Rutshuru territory since July may exceed 300, which would make it among the worst atrocities by M23 since its resurgence in late 2021. Rwandan support and involvement in M23's ongoing campaign is a violation of June's US-brokered peace accord, in which Rwanda committed to not engage in, support, or condone any military incursions or other acts in the Eastern DRC, and ensure that all armed groups cease engaging in hostilities. Similarly, the DRC has failed to uphold its own commitments in the US and Qatari mediated agreements by failing to rein in pro-Congolese government militias, which have continued to clash with M23, including failing to neutralize the still active FDLR, although analysts have noted that the DRC does have limited ability to exercise much control over these groups. So why has peace failed so far? Well, this is far from the first time that attempts at securing peace have faltered. Don't forget, this is a conflict that has persisted in ebbs and flows since the 1990s and involves ethnic tensions, historical grievances, geopolitical power struggles, and resource competition. Some analysts have pointed to the high pressure and deadline-based negotiations used by the US and Qatar as a reason why agreements have been able to be struck, but haven't changed the situation on the ground. This approach may also have contributed to differing interpretations of what's been agreed. The Congolese government says that the July declaration encompasses the non-negotiable withdrawal of M23 from occupied territory, while M23 has said that it will not do so. The two sides also disagree on the sequencing of further talks and confidence-building measures such as prisoner releases. A lack of enforcement and oversight mechanisms also complicates implementation. As a broader point, the Institute for Security Studies makes the case that peace is not achievable in the Eastern DRC if diplomatic engagement is not coupled with a credible deterrence. It points out that Rwanda and M23 have won decisive tactical victories, allowing Rwanda to project its regional power while undermining its rivals, securing a corridor of M23 control along the border that provides lucrative access to valuable minerals and acts as a buffer zone and security footprint. There is therefore little incentive for, and no mechanism to compel, Rwanda to withdraw from the Eastern DRC, and the fact that FDLR still remains active in the region serves as a pretext for continued Rwandan presence. But the conflict in the Eastern DRC involves a huge number of different players, including more than 100 armed groups, several countries' armed forces, and a host of mercenaries. So while fighting M23 continues, another rebel group, a Ugandan Islamist group called the Allied Democratic Forces, or ADF, has launched a string of deadly attacks that have killed scores of civilians in North Kivu and Ituri provinces. Ugandan forces have been present in the Eastern DRC since 2021, when the Congolese government invited them to help fight groups such as the ADF. However, in early 2025, Uganda unilaterally doubled its military presence in the Eastern DRC, without prior Congolese approval, citing security concerns. Although UN experts say that, like Rwanda, Uganda is benefiting from illicit resource extraction in the region. The point is that this conflict is a multifaceted one. We haven't, for example, even talked about the presence of Burundian troops in the Eastern DRC. So ultimately, as the Council on Foreign Relations writes, the US and Qatari peace processes seem to operate in a world in which the conflict is fundamentally between two opposing sides, which is always going to undermine their potential for success. Now, the US brokered DRC-Rwanda agreement from June was covered thoroughly across the media landscape, with 559 sources reporting on it. Taking a closer look, you can see that 73 of these came from the right and 79 came from the left. It's clear that there's some vast differences between each side of the political spectrum too, with the right portraying it as a diplomatic success and the left framing it with skepticism. We're able to get into this depth of analysis thanks to our sponsor this week, Ground News, a website and app that collects articles from across the world, helping you to burst your media bubble. For every story, just like this one, you're able to see how many sources are reporting on it, as well as where those sources fall politically. And that's important, as the same story can take on a completely different meaning depending on how it's framed to us. Something we find helps us tackle this problem even further is their fantastic blind spot feature, a newsfeed dedicated to showing us which stories are improperly covered by one side of the political spectrum or other. Here you can expand your own viewpoint, or simply help you understand someone else's media reality. It's no secret that the current media landscape is constantly trying to capture your attention and sway you to one side or the other. So having a tool that helps you understand bias and how it affects the media you consume is extremely crucial. If you're interested in staying on top of the news and want to explore the amazing features that Ground News has to offer, we're offering 40% off their unlimited access Vantage Plan subscription if you use the link in the description, or scan the QR code on screen. This offer is only available here, so make sure you go to ground.news/TLDR or click the link in the description to get started today.